Are the Fluance XL8S the best speakers in their price range? Stay tuned to find out.
Well, hello YouTube, Chris the Frugal Audiophile with you here again today. Welcome to another review. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Fluance XL8S bookshelf speaker, also known as the Fluance reference bookshelf speaker. They kind of changed some of their naming around. I think they kind of simplified things a little bit. Basically, they have the signature line and the reference line on their side, as well as some powered speakers. But anyway, I digress. So if you like this kind of content, please subscribe to my channel. Also, hit that little bell notification to be notified when I upload new content in the future. So the reason that I picked up this speaker is because I have heard that it is a better alternative to the Sony SSCS5, and it kind of is in about the same price range. Both of these speakers, the Sonys and the Fluances, bounce around a lot in their price range, but they're relatively at the same level, and so it's an easy comparison to make. So we're going to find out if this is better than the Sony speaker, and if it's a speaker that I recommend to you. So let's begin with some features and specs. Now, I'm kind of going to lump these two together because they do overlap a little bit, especially when you're talking about a speaker is the size of a woofer, a feature, or a spec. Well, it's a little bit gray, so I'm just going to kind of lump them together. So to begin, this is basically an 11-inch high by 8 inches wide by 9 inches deep speaker, and it weighs just a little bit less than 12 pounds on this one. So this is a vented bass reflex design, and that means that this speaker is, of course, ported. The interesting thing is with this one is that you can see here it is front ported, and it's got these actual two front ports, and that is a unique feature of the speaker, although there are others which have this function, like the ELAC Debut 2.0 series, as well as the Polk T series had some front ports as well. Oh, and also my Pyrean Tower speakers there in the home theater room do have front ports on them as well. So you do see that some. It will come into play as we go on our review here. So we have here an MDF cabinet. It kind of has a little bit of an arc to it on each side of it, so it's not a square, it bows out. You can see a picture of that here on the screen, and so that kind of gives you an idea of what the design elements of the speaker are. One nice thing I like about it is that it has magnetic grills, and you see them here. They're just your basic wood frame with some acoustic transparent fabric put on them. We see this a lot, and bam, now it's on. Take it off. I think it almost looks better without them. And on the bottom here, you can see the Fluance logo of the speaker that's permanently attached there. So these speakers have a 1-inch neodymium balanced silk dome ferrofluid cooled tweeter. All that basically means it's a 1-inch silk dome tweeter. And then we have a 5 1/4-inch woven glass fiber composite woofer, so it's got some glass in it as well as some other materials, likely some polypropylene, things of that nature. So it's a multi-material woofer that you have on this one. Also, it does have your standard 5-way binding post. So moving on, this has a power handling of 40 to 80 watts RMS. So it can handle some power, but not a ton. I probably wouldn't put a giant 400 watt amplifier on it, or at least not, and crank it up. You're going to break the speaker. It is 85 decibel sensitive, which is not super sensitive, but it's better than some out there. You are going to need a decent amount of power to get this speaker going. And it is listed on their site as being 8 ohm compatible. I'm guessing that means that it's 8 ohm nominal. So basically what that means is that it's not going to break an 8 ohm nominal amplifier if you connect it to that piece of equipment. So it's fairly efficient, but not real high efficient. And a lot of times you will see that on these smaller bookshelf speakers given their size and the components that are used within them. So next we're going to take a look at frequency response, and you can see a graph here on the screen. And this shows basically a response from 50 hertz to 20,000 kilohertz. I ran a frequency sweep, I can confirm that. However, you also see here in the upper range some peaks, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we go on. This is somewhat of a bright speaker. Not as bright as others, but it is a fairly bright speaker, and that is reflected here in this frequency response graph. And what's awesome is that Fluance actually posted this frequency response graph on their website. We don't see a lot of speaker manufacturers post the frequency responses on their website. Oftentimes you have to go to another publication or another reviewer's site to find those measurements. Well, Fluance had them given to us right there on their site, so kudos to them. I appreciate that. All right, so this speaker comes with a lifetime parts and labor warranty. That is pretty impressive. I know that Fluance does do a very good job standing by their products, and I cannot really speak to their customer service because I've simply never had to use it. I'm sure it's great if you do. They also say on their site that this has lifetime customer support, which I would hope most products do, but hey, it's listed there. I never had to use it because I've always had good luck with their products, never had one break down, so kudos to them again. Finally, this speaker costs roughly $153. It kind of fluctuates a little bit in price. You're going to find it in the range of $150 to $160. And now this brings us to the assignment for this speaker, and that is to be a high quality desktop or surround sound speaker. How did it do with that assignment? Well, let's find out. First of all, we have what it gets right. The first thing is attractive design. These speakers, I think, look better than most speakers in their price class. If you take a look at the Sony speakers, they're just kind of a plain black box or shoebox style, as they call them. They have their uniqueness, but these I think are even nicer. Now, of course, as I said before, this is a vinyl wrap, so it's nothing fancy. It's not a real wood veneer. It's just a wrap that they put on, but I like it. It looks nice. I like that it has, these cool colors in the woofer and tweeter. I like that the grills are magnetic. It is a very attractive speaker. Some don't like the gloss front. Although it is a fingerprint magnet, I do think that it looks nice. So I am 100% on board with the design of this speaker. I really do like it. Also, it is a nice size. It's not going to look weird on a desktop or in tight spaces where space is limited. Now, it's not the smallest speaker out there, but for a decent quality, 5-inch bookshelf speaker, 5-inch woofer on a bookshelf speaker, it's a nice compact size. It's not going to stand out, and I like that about this speaker. And it does have decent sound. Actually, it has quite good sound, I'm going to say. First, we talk about bass. Now, bass on this speaker is not going to blow you away. It doesn't produce more bass than most speakers in its class. It's not going to overwhelm you with bass, but what bass is there is of good quality, and it is very tight. Sometimes bass reflex speakers have a tendency to be boomy. I don't think this speaker is. As I was listening to Whiplash by Hollywood Principal, I could get a sense of the bass line in that song. Now, I have heard that song on bigger speakers, and I have heard that song on systems with a subwoofer, and it definitely is more impactful in those setups. But these little Fluance speakers held their own, and I definitely got a sense of the bass that was there. Now, pushing them closer to a wall was helpful, and that did bring up the bass just a little bit. Even though it is front ported, sound still reflects off the rear wall, and you put it closer to a wall, it's going to elevate most often the bass, and it did do that. So if I want a little more bass, I'd push them back on my computer desk there. If I thought it was getting a little bit boomy, I would just bring them forward. But these speakers really weren't super boomy. Just sometimes you get them too close to a wall, you are going to get a little bit of inaccuracy in your bass, but you will have more of it. Next is detailed highs. That aluminum silk dome tweeter array there, that whole setup, it produces a lot of treble. Now, it's not an excessive amount. It's less than other speakers. We're going to get to that later on in the review. But it does produce a lot of treble detail, I am going to call it. When I was listening to Bubbles by Yoshihiro Kawa, it just sounded like those ping pong balls in that song were bouncing off of my ear holes. I mean, it was a lot of detail that was coming at me, but it was good detail, and I did enjoy listening to songs on these speakers that had a lot of treble detail within them. Does it overemphasize the detail? I don't think so. Also, I found these speakers to have very accurate imaging. A song I like to use to check that is Mango Tree by Zac Brown Band and Sarah Bareilles. The reason is because in that song, Zac Brown's voice is right dead set in the middle, and then her voice is just slightly off to the right in your soundstage there. And these speakers did a good job of reproducing that. I got a very good sense of where his voice was and then where her voice was just a little bit off to my left as I was listening to the song there. So very good. I would say they had, very tight imaging. I found that sounds were where they should be. Also, the soundstage was quite expansive. I've heard bigger, but I've also heard smaller. I was listening to Chocolate Chip Trip by Tool. I think many of you are familiar with that song. And sounds were coming way left and right of the speakers as well as going through the middle. And it even sounded as though some were coming from behind me. So good job to the XL8S. They really reproduced a nice large soundstage. Next, what they get wrong. First thing is treble could get a little fatiguing. Some might say that it is too much. I don't think it was awful, but it definitely is a lot of treble detail that is coming at you while you're listening to your audio selection. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. I didn't take off a lot of points here because I actually thought that the treble detail was nice, but I could see how some might find it a bit fatiguing after longer listening periods. Also, some might find these speakers to be a bit bass light. And I would say in comparison to other speakers that I have around the house or I've heard, yeah, they are a little bit bass light. Now, as I said, pushing them back towards the wall would bring up that bass a little bit. And as I said, you get a good sense of the bass track that was in a song, even though it may not be as impactful as with a larger speaker or while using a subwoofer. That's going to be the case for a lot of budget and even not so budget bookshelf speakers of this size. Now on Fluance's website, they list these as a surround sound speaker as part of their reference package of speakers. And I would say, yeah, these would make a nice surround sound speaker. They give you a really good amount of sound. I think they would do a good job. However, they might look a little obtuse hanging on a wall. They're going to stick out quite a bit. I'll show you a picture here of them, and they are a deep speaker. They're about 9 inches deep. For me, that's a bit too large for a surround sound speaker in small rooms. In a larger room, maybe you could get away with it. Some people, they just like to put huge speakers on their wall. If that's you, then you're not going to have any issue with these speakers. But for me, I think they would be a little bit obtuse, especially hanging on a wall. It is nice that they are front ported. That helps out with hanging them on a wall. They also do have, I forgot to mention, a bracket on the back that you can use. I believe it's a keyhole slot. Actually, there's 2 keyhole slots on the back of it. So you're going to need a little template, and then you can mount the speaker on a wall if that's something that you wish to do and you have the space to do so. Something else that concerns me, I didn't take a lot of points for this, but it is a concern, is the vinyl wrap. A lot of the inexpensive speakers I have with vinyl wraps on them over the years, that started to peel off. It happened on my Mica speakers, it's happened on my Dayton speakers, and it's happened on a couple of my ELAC speakers. Now, the funny thing is, not all of them in each of those brands start to do that, but some of them do over time, and that's of a little bit of a concern to me. However, in this price range, well, it's typically what you get, and what you get is what you get. So now I have a couple of subjective concerns for these speakers, and these may or may not apply to you. The first one is they don't look real good upside down. As you know, on my desktop in there, if you watched my channel before, I tend to place my speakers upside down because they are a bit elevated above my seated position. And so it's nice to have the tweeter at ear height. In order to do that, I have to turn them upside down. And some speakers work better for this than others. The PSP speakers I have are perfect because they actually are made for the tweeter to be placed on the bottom. So those are perfect for me. These work. It's just with that permanently attached Fluance label, you're going to have it upside down when you place a speaker upside down on a desk. Some speakers allow you to rotate the grill and they have the label on the grill, and then it doesn't really matter what's going on behind the grill, and then you can place your speakers upside down. These do not. They're going to look a little strange. Something else that I was wondering when I purchased the speakers was how well do they match my Fluance RT81 turntable that is in walnut. Well, as you see in the picture here, it's close, but not quite. The RT81 looks a little more brown in its hue, and the XL8S looks a little more red in its walnut coloration. I'm guessing that these products are manufactured at different factories. Likely they're getting them from China, probably using different vinyl wraps on them, and so thus the difference in color. But on their site, they're both stated as being walnut, even though they don't look the same in coloration. So if you're thinking you get these to match your RT81 turntable, well, a little bit, but not quite. Okay, having said all that, what is my Frugality grade? Well, I am going to give these speakers a very solid B. And the reason for that is some like the detailed highs and some don't. That's really going to be up to you and what you're looking for. Also, a lot of the cosmetic nitpicks that I have are more subjective than anything else, and they're not really reasons to detract from a speaker's quality. They're just things about them that I don't really like, and so those are subjective. Maybe you have those same concerns, maybe don't. But overall, I think that they sound very good and look nice. The reason I didn't give them an A is because of the highs sometimes being a little bit fatiguing, because that they are a little bit bass light, and also that the vinyl wrap does concern me a little. And this brings me to my recommendations. First thing I would say is that these would be great for a desktop setup if you're looking for a speaker in the $150 price range. They fit nicely and they look good and they sound good on a desktop. That's mainly where I've been using them, so I can vouch for their use case there. I think that they are a little bit bulky to be used as surrounds unless you really have a good sized theater. Nevertheless, you could do that if you wanted to. If you need more bass, I really recommend adding a sub. When I tested these, for the most part, I turned off my sub and set my mini DSP to just output to the amplifier, not to the subwoofer, and tested them out there. But eventually I did add back in the sub, set the crossover to 80 hertz, and fired them up, and that really brought the bass to life and made it much more impactful. It sounded great. It was a great pairing with my Bic F12. Finally, if you prefer a warmer sound and are looking in this price range, I would check out the ELAC BS41 BK. I've done a review on those. They cost about the same price sometimes. Actually, I think right now they're on sale for $109. They're also a good speaker, but they're going to be a little bit warmer than these speakers. They're going to have a little more bass and a little less treble detail. Now, the next question is, would I recommend these over the Sony SS-CS5s? If you think that the Sonys have a little bit too much treble detail, you might like these better. They still have some, but it is not to the level of those Sony speakers. Also, I think that the Fluance speakers have tighter bass. They don't have quite as much bass as the Sonys, but what is there is tighter. And I always recommend adding a sub to any speaker. But if you can't add a sub and you want more bass, then get the Sonys. Just recognize it's not going to be quite as tight as the bass on these Fluance speakers. They're still good. Really, all of it is subjective. It's about what are you looking for. To me, the Sonys, they throw a lot of detail right at you in your face. These Fluances they throw a little bit of detail in your face, but not to the extent of the Sonys. And I also think that vocals sound a little bit more natural on the XL8S speakers. So that's something to consider as well. Personally, I would choose these speakers over the Sony speakers, but it's very, very close. And the differences are there, but they are minimal. If I had to live with the Sony speakers, I would. I would be very happy with those in the $150 speaker price range. But if I had a choice, I would probably go with the XL8S. So have you heard the Fluance XL8S speakers? What do you think of them? Do you disagree or agree with my review here of them? Have you heard both these and the Sony SSCS5s? And which ones would you choose? I thank you so much for watching my channel. If you like this kind of content, be sure to check out Patreon and buy me a cup of coffee. And remember, frugal doesn't necessarily mean cheap.